Yodo shel Adam. It's obvious to me the hand of a person. Do you have that? Amabai? 3B1. Okay, 3B1, Amar Abaye. So Abaye says the following. Now again, it's a little technical. We got to hold our, hold your cup, as they say in Yiddish. You got to hold your, keep the cheshbon, keep the calculation of what's going on over here. We learned about the hand of a person. We learned about if a person is standing in public property and he extends his hand into private property. And he extends his hand, let's say he puts his hand inside private property, and the guy on the inside puts something in his hand, right? So we say that the guy on the inside did the akira, he uprooted the item, and the guy on the outside subsequently took the item out from inside and he put it outside and he put it down. So we say two people did the act. The guy on the inside placed it in the guy's hand, and the guy on the outside moved it outside. Now, when the guy on the outside received the item into his hand, while his hand was inside, we do not look at it as if the guy on the inside gave it outside. Now, meaning the guy on the outside, maybe we'll make it simple. The guy on the outside is called the ani, the poor man. The guy on the inside is called the balabayit, the owner of the house. The poor man is coming for a piece of bread, let's say. Or he's coming to give the guy in the house something, the whole to him. So when he's coming for that piece of bread, and when he extends his hand inside the house, now we said if he goes ahead and he takes it from the hand of the owner of the house, that means he, the poor man, uprooted the item. And then if he subsequently brings it outside and puts it down, he has placed down the item. He has done everything. He would be liable. But when he does part of the act, we say he's not liable for only half the act. It's the whole act. Now, when he's standing in public property and his hand is inside, and when the owner of the house places it in the hand of the poor man, we don't look at the fact that the guy is standing outside in public property as if it was placed into public property. Meaning, because if he's standing outside, his hand is inside, do you look at the hand as if it's in public property, because the body is in public property, and therefore it's as if the guy on the inside placed it in public property? What would have been if the guy on the inside, the balabayit, went outside and handed it to the guy outside? We say he would be hayav, he would be obligated, the guy on the inside, because he violated the rule by going from inside to out. But when he hands it to the guy's hand, the guy's poor man's hand who's inside the private property, because he extended in, we don't say that the status of the item when it reaches the hand of the poor man is as if it's already outside, as if you're giving it to outside. You don't say that it's as if it's outside. Is that clear, Adam, or not clear? Now, that works both for the guy on the outside, that we don't say the hand has the status of public property when he's standing outside. Similarly, it's the same thing regarding when the guy is on the other side. Well, let's see how the Gemara writes it. Amabai, Pshitali, and the Gemara will explain. Pshitali, it's obvious to me from the Mishnah. Yodo shel Adam, the hand of a person, and if you want to send to the group that we're on, it's obvious to me that the hand of the person, by the way, someone told me, I met someone recently, says he gets Adam's, no problem. So we're saying the hand of the person that's extended from one domain that he's standing to another domain is not considered like public property and it's not considered like private property. Now, what does that mean? In a situation that he's standing in public property, like we just gave, and his hand is extended inside, the hand does not have the status of your body, right? Your body's in one place, your hand's in another place. It doesn't have the status of the body. It's considered public property. And also, in a situation when he's standing inside private property and his hand is extended into public property, right? The guy in the balabayit, the guy in the inside the house, has a piece of bread in his hand. And, or no, he doesn't have anything in his hand. He has an empty hand, and he puts his hand out into public property. But he's standing inside. The guy in the house, the balabayit inside the house, the owner of the house, extends his hand outside, but he's standing inside. The poor man is outside, and he puts it in the hand of that balabayit. Now, do you say this, that since his body is inside, so when the poor man placed it into his hand and the hand was outside, we don't say it's as if he placed it inside the house, because if he would be as if you placed it inside the house, so then the poor man should be violating the law of Shabbat by picking up the item in public property and placing into the hand of the owner of the house when his hand is extended outside. If the hand will have the status like the body's inside. It's as if he handed it inside. Because to say if he would hand it directly inside, he would violate. Now, but the fact that he didn't hand it inside, he handed it outside. But the guy who he handed to, his body was standing inside, but his hand was outside. We don't look at the hand like it's the body itself, like it's private property, because he's standing inside. That is two cases. Good? Now, that's what the Gemara is going to say. Keshut harabim lo damya. It doesn't have the status of public property, the hand. Miyado da'ani. From the situation, from the hand from the case of the poor man who sticks his hand inside, and the balabayit took something from that poor man, right? So here's the case. The poor man outside has his watch. He has a watch and he wants to leave it by the guy inside the house. And he extends his hand inside, and the balabayit, or the owner of the house, took it out of his hand. So if his hand has the status of where he is, the poor man is outside and the hand is inside. So if it's the status of public property, it's as if the guy on the inside took something from public property and brought it inside private property. But we don't say that. We don't say because he's standing outside, it's as if when he took it from the hand of the guy who's standing outside, when the hand is inside, it's as if he took it from outside. We don't say that. But if it would be that way, then the guy would be violating the laws of Shabbat, the guy on the inside, because he took from public to private. Rather, we say if the poor man's hand is extended inside, but the poor man's standing outside, we look at it as if, in a certain sense, it's not outside. It's definitely, we don't look at the hand when it's inside that it's outside, because his body is outside. Now, similarly, when a person is inside and his hand is extended outside, we don't say that we give him the status as if he's inside. We don't look at the hand when he's inside and he sticks his hand outside. We don't look at as if the hand is inside. How do we know? From the Yodosha Balabayit, from the case of when the Balabayit, when the guy on the inside of the house stretches his hand outside, and the poor man takes something from him. If it's considered when the guy on the inside stretches his hand outside, if the hand is considered like inside because his body is inside, so then the guy who took from him should be chayav, because it went from this area, it went from private to public. That's the reason we don't say that is because we don't say that the hand has that status. It doesn't have the status like like the where the body is, both if the body is in private property, both of the bodies where in public property. It doesn't have the status where the body is. So now we know if a person sticks out a hand, if you have a, if you stick out your hand, good morning, Nathan. If a person goes ahead and he has something in his hand, he has a, let's say, he has food in his hand. Good morning, Simon. And good morning, Nathan. Good morning, Ralph. If a person sticks out his hand with something, let's say he has a piece of bread. Good morning, Ralph. He has a piece
Morning,
of bread
Rabbi.
in his hand, and he stuck his hand outside. So he was not supposed to, the Balabayit was not supposed to pick up something from his property and stick his hand outside. Now, because he did half the malacha, he did half the act. He uprooted it, he moved it, he extended his hand outside, but and if he would just put it down outside, he would have had finalized, he would have finalized the sin. He would have completed the act of going from private to public, uprooting it from a private place and putting it down public place. But he only did one part. He uprooted from private property, extended it outside, but he didn't place it outside. The other guy went in and took it from his hand. So if the other guy took it from his hand, so each guy did half the act. So there was a violation of a rabbinic law. There was a rabbinic violation. Now, Abaya has a question. Did the rabbis give him a fine? Fined him, what would be the fine? And they gave the hand the status of a carmelis. A carmelis is an area that there are certain places that are not considered private, they're not considered public. And those areas you can't go ahead and carry, certain types of those areas are rabbinically prohibited to carry in such a place. Let's say carrying something, right? So therefore, the question here the Gemara wants to know is what status is this hand? Let's say they explain like this: Carmelis is an area that Minat Torah is considered a mokum patur, a place that's not prohibited to carry, but in certain ways, this area is similar to public property, and in certain ways, it's similar to some private property. And let's say out in the ocean, right, or out at sea, in the river, in the ocean, that should be an example of a place that's not. It's not a place. It's not the common place that people are traveling. It's not a place where you have 600,000 people or whatever the common place traveling. But it's also not. But in a certain sense, but people go there. It has certain level similarity to public use, and also it has, it's not. So it's not so. It has similarity to public. It's also private. It's not. It's not 100% public. It's not 100% private. So such a place, the rabbis said, if you're going to carry in such a place, you're going to come to carry in a real public property, let's say. Or
What about a desert?
Say it again.
What about a desert?
So we'll have to.
Deserts.
Yes, we'll have to see that. We'll have to see in the Gemara. It's what the Gemara classifies. The Gemara is going to classify. It's going to discuss on Daf Vav the different cases of what's called a like a valley. The Gemara is going to talk about. We'll have to see more about those cases if the desert would fit into that category or not. So those type of places, the rabbis made a rabbinic law. And therefore you will not be able to carry in such a place, and you can't carry from a public place into this Carmelis into this area. You can't carry from a private place into this area. So there are certain laws regarding this this area. And so now the question is, what status did they give, did the rabbis regarding the hand of this person? Because this person's hand, now, if the rabbis gave the status of this hand, because we said that this hand doesn't have the status of public property. We said if a guy is standing out, if a guy is outside and he sticks his hand inside, we said that his hand does not have the status of being outside, because if it has a status of being outside, so then if the guy would go ahead and from the inside would place something into that hand, then the guy on the inside would have violated the law, if you consider the hand like outside. And similarly, when the guy is inside and when he sticks his hand outside and the guy on the outside places something in his hand, we don't consider it as if the hand is inside because his body is inside. So in both cases, in those two cases, the hand does not have a status like outside. It doesn't have a status of inside. So now the question is, what status is this hand that the rabbis give to this hand? Did the rabbis give it a status like it's a Carmelite? Did they give it a status like this type of, it has its type of domain, it's its own domain, that you would be forbidden to go ahead, if you gave it a status of a Carmelite, this type of area of the hand. So just like we said, a Carmelite, you can't carry from this Carmelite, this type of area to private property. You can't carry from you can't carry from public or carry from it. And so therefore, you wouldn't be able to, or you can't carry from it into public property. So if this hand has something in it, would you say now that the hand has a status it's a new domain, it's a domain in itself, it's not public, it's not private, do we consider it like this third item, like this Carmelite, and therefore it would be forbidden for you, the same way you can't take something from this Carmelite, from this valley, and put it, or this ocean, and put it into private property, or take from this ocean and put it into public property, so too, you can't go ahead and take this hand that's now extended and bring it back into public property, or take this hand that's extended and bring it back into private property. If we gave the hand, this hand, as if it's a new entity, it's its own new domain, and we gave it a status of a Carmelite, so then you would be forbidden to take the food that you have now in the hand that's outside and pull it back. You wouldn't be able to go ahead and take your hand back, and you would have to leave your hand extended until Shabbat is over. Because what are you supposed to do? You can't carry. Did the rabbis give you a fine and said that this hand has a status of this Carmelite, and since it has a status of a Carmelite, you can't carry from a Carmelite this type of domain into public property, and you can't carry from this domain into private property. So wherever you're standing, if you're standing inside and your hand is outside, or you're standing outside and your hand is inside, you have to just leave it extended, because this hand, it's its own creature, so to speak. It's its own. It's added to the list of domains that have the status of this Carmelite. Carmelite. That is the question. So Abaye's question is, Yodo shel Adam, the hand of the person. So either do we give it a extent, do we give it a status of a Carmelite or not? So Yadu shel Adam, the hand of a person, Mahu Sheteosek karmelis. It doesn't have a status of a karmelis. Mi kansura banan, and the Gemara explains if you would give it a status of a karmelit, so then it would the next step would be that you would not be able to move that hand with the food that's inside, whatever item is inside, you have to leave it extended. Because you can't carry from a karmelit into public, can't carry from karmelit to private. Mi kansura banan ladu legabe. Did the rabbis find him that he cannot bring it back? Although, or the rabbis did not give him that level. The rabbis, it's not a Reshut Rabim, it's not a Reshut Yachid when it's extended, but it's not, the fact that you're not here and you're not there doesn't mean you're something else, doesn't mean you're a Karmelit. Maybe you're not called a Karmelit. Although, so that's, and if it's not considered a Karmelit, then you'll be able to bring your hand back. That was the question of the Gemara. Tashma. So now the Gemara is going to bring a following point. Now, the Rashba explains the Gemara's question the following. Explains it it goes a little bit more in depth. From the Mishnah, we see there's a rabbinic warning. There's a rabbinic prohibition for the poor man or the balabayit or the guy on the inside of the house to return the item back to the place that he's standing. See, the Mishnah is talking about, the case of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah says you can't return your hand back. That's if your hand will complete the act, the prohibition, right? If you go ahead, if you're standing inside and you extend your hand outside, and the guy puts something in your hand, right? You're standing inside, and you extend your hand outside the public property, and the guy on the outside places something in your hand. So you did not pick it up from his hand. But if he places something in your hand, there'll be a rabbinic prohibition for you to take that item and bring it inside, correct? Or the guy on the outside would go ahead and stick his hand inside. The guy on the inside would be forbidden to go ahead and take the thing out from his hand and put it inside.
That's how they trap monkeys. They put a banana inside of a cage. The monkey sticks his hand in and will not let go of the banana no matter what. And then they come and they catch the monkey. They don't trap the monkey, they trap the banana.
Very interesting. So here, in this case, the Raja points out, there you cannot bring your hand into, if the guy on the inside sticks his hand outside with an item, or we said the case is, if somebody, right, if I'm on the inside and I stick my hand outside, someone puts something in my hand while it's outside, I can't pull it inside, because by pulling it inside, I have completed the act. My act would have done the second part, the second step of carrying. By bringing it inside, moved the item, finished the job. Now the item has transported from public to private. I extended my hand outside. The guy placed an item in my hand. I went ahead and pulled it inside. Now I did half of the malacha. And I did half the act. And what happened as a result of my act? The item went from public to private. That there's no question. I will not be able to put my hand back in.
Are you allowed to bring it back? Or
no, I would not be able to. Right, because the car. It could be maybe it can't go 4 amot with maybe again you're saying if my hand is outside, if let's say if I stick my hand outside, it might not be dropping it most probably would not be a problem.
From Carmelite to private.
But you're saying because if your hand is outside, your hand is a Carmelite, then you should have a problem of going of even dropping it. Yeah, so right, so maybe the guy would be able to take it up, the guy who put it in, but he would have a problem.
Left,
Right.
are you allowed to drop?
Right, but right, he would, you're asking a good question. What about the drop it? Because you can't put it into, if it's a carmelite, you will not be able to go ahead, bring it back in. You will not be able to,
You can't transfer to public property either.
right, so then you would have, you would be real, so you'd be really would be stuck. You would have to keep it, again, right, if it's not a carmelite, then you should be able to, if it's not a carmelite, so then it's like a mukam tour, so then you would be able to drop it.
What was the purpose of the rabbi? Someone say,
So that is the question. The first question, would we give it a status of a new, because it's of the similarity to public or private, that people will start making mistakes. The same way the rabbis are concerned about certain areas, that if you're going to carry in that area, you're going to go ahead and carry in a real area that you shouldn't carry. To carry by the ocean, you're going to carry from the ocean to private. You might come to carry from public to private, because because there are some similarities of the ocean to some public, to open public space. It's not owned by a specific. It's it's ownerless. It's so people might come to carry from a real public property to a private property. But do we look at the hand? Are we concerned? Because sometimes your hand, because if your hand and your body is in private, the hand has a status of private. If your body and your hand are in public, your hand has a status of what? Of public. So your hand, there is concern that you can make mistakes if you could go ahead and do certain things with your hand, if you're going to allow you to carry from, so therefore maybe the rabbis wanted to give this hand a certain status, a different status, in order to serve as a fence, so you shouldn't come to violate the Shabbat. But if a hand has the status of a carmelite, then you'd be correct. I'm stuck. I can't let it down. I have to keep it extended. If I have the items, I extend from, if I'm in private, I extend my hand outside with food in my hand. I can't, if it's a carmelite, if my hand is a carmelite, I can't drop it. I can't put it back. I'm stuck. You should leave it extended till after Shabbat. You have to get some people to help him out to hold his hand up. But if it's not a carmelite, then technically I could just drop it down. So that would be the Gemara's question. Did the rabbis? But the Rajba points out that this is different. This case, when I go ahead, when the item started in private, and I extend my hand in public, and if my hand does not have, if that case is different than somebody in public places something in my hand when my hand is extended. Because there's a difference. But when an item went from public to my hand, and then I bring my hand back in, that the Gemara says that definitely will be a problem. That Abai doesn't have a question. If I extended my hand outside, and the guy puts something in my hand out while my hand is outside, I can't bring it in. Because then I'm finishing the act. I'm finishing the item going from public to private. But here, it was the item originated in private. And I stuck my hand, it was never placed, it was never uprooted. I stick my hand outside. So maybe this type of situation, where maybe that case, maybe I would be able to move my hand and put it back inside. So that's what the Gemara says. Question. Mi kansua. Let's see this point over here. But in our case, you are returning the item to the place that it was originally uprooted from. In contrast to that other case, when it started out, it was uprooted from public and it went to private. Here, you started in private and you want to bring it back to private. So that is the question of Abaye. Did we give the hand the status of a carmelite, and then you would be forbidden to bring it back or to drop it? Or does the hand have a status of some other than not a carmelite, and you'll be able to go ahead and drop it? Or maybe even
You're saying that you're standing in private, your hand is in private, you pick up the item, If it's not a Carmelite, you can drop it back down, but if the rabbis made your hand a Carmelite, you can't even drop it in the same place that you picked it up from. Is that what you're saying?
If if the hand has a status of a Carmelite,
I'm asking about the case. The case is you're in private, your hand is in private, you pick up an item, and now can you drop it?
yes, that you could. If you're in
That's the
private,
question.
no, the question is, I'm in private. I stuck my hand. I have something in my hand. I picked up something in private. I extended the hand to public.
And then you bring it back.
Now, am I allowed to bring it back? Am I allowed to bring that
If
hand?
the hand is a Carmelite, no, and if your hand is still you, then yes.
Right, exactly. That is the Gemara's question. Morning, Morris. So the Gemara says like this. Tashma. To answer this question, we have to go ahead and do some research. We have to go ahead and find some other precedents that are on the other cases, right, Adam? How does the lawyer figure out an answer to the question? Do we have any precedents? Can we compare the precedent to here? Is it comparable or not comparable? Tashma. Haita yado malaya piro. Your hand was filled with fruit, right? He's eating healthy, right? He had some fruit in his hand. And you took your hand with your fruits, with your apple, and other things, you brought your hand outside with the fruits in your hand. So it sounds like you were inside your house, you extended your hand outside. So one opinion says you cannot bring that hand back in. That hand that you extended outside holding the fruit, you can't. Now, if you would finish the job and hand it to someone outside, you violated the Shabbat. You went from private, you went to public. Here, you're not handing it to anybody in public. That would be a violation of the Shabbat. What are you doing? You want to know, can I bring my hand back? I realized I had no right to do that. I'm not allowed to take food and take it from private property. Morning, Gary. I can't take my fruit and extend it into public property. Right? I did already half the job. I did half the malacha. I uprooted and I went over the threshold of private, and I stuck my hand out in public. But the question is, can I bring my hand back, or do I have to keep my hand extended? So Tani Chada Asul Zira. One writer says, I am not allowed to return my hand back. I have to keep my hand. Good morning. I have to keep my hand extended with the fruit until after Shabbat. Yes.
Does it matter within 2 amas of the ground?
The Gemara, the 10 Tvachim. The Gemara is going to talk about the 10 Tvachim. We're going to talk about 10 Tvachim. Usually we find 10 Tvachim when it comes to space, what's called the area of Shut Rabim, under 10 Tvachim. We also have another concept of within 3 Tvachim, it's like on the ground. There's another concept. The Gemara is going to focus on the first. On the former, the Gemara is going to talk about soon, getting up to about perhaps there's a difference whether if it's higher than 10 Tvachim or lower than 10 Tvachim. That's coming right up. So the Gemara says, one writer says, Asul Hazdir, you can't return your hand with the food. And Itani Idach Mutal Hazdir. And another writer says you're allowed to return it. Remember, we're very concerned here about are we how far are we going to go to, are we going to find the person, because we want to make sure the guy won't come to do the real thing, so to speak, the real biblical prohibition. So would we go ahead and fine him and say, you know what, you can't bring that hand back? So the Gemara says, my love, what is the argument in these two opinions? One opinion says, if you got it, Morris. One opinion says if you extend your hand with fruit, the guy standing by the front door. Let's say if you're not able, if a person is not able to carry from private to public, because meaning it's a public property, there's no eruv and you can't use it, whatever the situation is. If he extends his hand outside with the food in his hand, one opinion says he can't bring it back in. He has to keep his hand extended. How do you like that, Gary? We're going to fine him. He has, according to one opinion, keep his hand, and the other opinion says no, he can bring his hand back with the food. What's the argument? Why should one say you could and one say you can't. So the Gemara suggests that most probably they're arguing in this issue that we brought up. Do we give him a fine to classify his hand as this new domain called Carmelite, this new area which you can't, and once it gives it status of a Carmelite, you can't carry from a Carmelite that to a private property. So the Gemara says, my lab, they're arguing the following. The Masava, one Atana holds, Carmelite Damya, that the hand has a status of this place called a Carmelite, an area that you're rabbinically not allowed to carry from that area to public or that area to private, and therefore you are stuck, because if your hand has the status of a Carmelite, it's as if you're going from a Carmelite to private or public. You can't carry an item from a Carmelite to private or public money, and you have to keep your hand extended. And Marsav, on the other opinion, says, Carmelite Damya. It does not have a status of a Carmelite. And if it doesn't have a status of a Carmelite, you could actually bring your hand back with the food item that you have in your hand that started where you started from. So that's what the Gemara is suggesting. And what does the Gemara say? Look, the Gemara says there is no proof that these two opinions are arguing on the issue that we brought up. So the Gemara says the following. Perhaps the Kuli Alma, maybe everybody holds Carmelite Damya. It's possible that everybody holds that we're going to give the hand a status of a Carmelite. And since it would give it a hand a status of a Carmelite, we said a Carmelite, we mentioned before, let's say an ocean or desert or certain areas, a valley, certain areas which are not public, not 100% public, they're not 100% private. So we gave them a certain rabbinic status of prohibited to carry. So everybody holds maybe the hand has the status of a Carmelite, but as Nathan suggested, it depends how high, what the height of the item is. Lo kasha, kan lamata me'asara, kan lamayla me'asara. If it's less than 10 tvachim from the ground, that's called space of public property. But if it's higher than 10 tvachim could be some maybe 40 inches, could be 36 inches. How to calculate 10 tvachim? That's the 10 tvachim is the size of a gate that you need when if you make a roof. You have a roof and it's a flat roof and people use the roof. If it's used, it's a place that people use, you have to have a gate on your roof, right? The question is, what's the size of your gate? You have to put up a gate. People shouldn't fall. So what's the size of a gate that you have to put up? It's 10 tvachim. It has to be a minimum of 10 tvachim. But if you put up a 40-inch gate and people are still going to fall, you still have to put up a larger gate. You have to make sure people don't fall. But there's let's say you want to make a wall for a sukkah, right? What's the wall for a sukkah? What's the minimum height of a wall for sukkah? 10 tvachim. Has to be considered a 10 tvachim, about 40 inches. You want to make a small sukkah, you're going to have to bend down to get into that sukkah. Higher than 10 tvachim. Right. Correct. Or standing, and how he's holding the item. If he's holding it low, right? If I hold the item like this, it's lower than 10 tvachim. Right. Depends how well, right. You're extending the hand like this, extending the hand like this. Right. That would be another case of, also, let's say people have in front of your house. Someone has in front of the house. You have, let's say, a fence, right? And you want to separate that, you want to be able to carry within that area in front of your house, right? So let's say you have bushes in front of your house, right? Let's say you have a front lawn, you have a front area, and then you have bushes, right, Gary? I'm not saying that's what your house looks like, but you have bushes, and then it goes into public property. So if those bushes are high, 10 tvachim, then that could serve as a fence, because there's an issue. Because if you have an open, let's say you own the area in front of your house. Let's say you have your front lawn, you have your grass in front of your house. Let's say, but if it runs right into public property, you might come to carry from that area to public property. But if you have a gate in front or you have bushes in front that are a certain height, then that serves that separation. Or people make people put two, they make an Erev, you see the two pieces of wood, a Surat Pesach, and they run a string across to show that this is a separate area. So also over there, the 10 Tvachim, that height of 10 Tvachim is a very important thing. Interesting when it comes to a shul, what is the size of machitza for a shul? So Rav Moshe Feinstein's opinion is that the size that you need separating between the men and the women should be around 5 feet. Because 5 feet is about shoulder height. And if you have shoulder height, if you have some sort of fence between the men and the women, machitza, a partition that's 5 feet, so that will prevent kalut rosh. That will prevent lightheadedness. Because there's that you have a level. That was a Moshe's chidush that he said that technically you don't need a machitza that goes up to the person's all the way up to the person's head. That technically such a high level machitza. You want to make a machitza that separates the men and the women that goes all the way full height that you can't actually see the woman. Meaning they don't. But that's a beautiful thing. But he wanted to what is the halacha. It's very important to know what is the law, and you have to also know what's the stringency. Therefore, that ruling of Rav Moshe really helped save many of the shuls from remaining orthodox and not turning conservative. The fact that for many of the modern shuls, that the fact that they were allowed to have a machitza that was, within 5 feet high, it didn't have to be 6 feet high. But maybe many people were more comfortable, perhaps, in certain areas. Maybe we're talking about in the Ashkenaz community, and that helped many. Say it again. But even if it's see-through, the fact that it's a separation, separating you can't come to that type of emotion. You're not coming to that lightheadedness because there's some sort of divider in between. The issue will be if the ladies are not dressed perfectly properly. Then the rabbi has a problem when he's seeing. If you're facing that direction, that would be an issue. You have to be aware of, because not always the ladies are dressed the way they're supposed to be dressed, properly, and that will be an issue. I think he talks about, maybe in that shuvah, he talks about a type of thing that they see you don't see them, a certain type of thing. Okay. So the Gemara says, that maybe it's no proof that maybe everybody holds, it would have a status of a Carmelite. And if the hand would have a status of a Carmelite, when it's extended, everybody would hold, maybe you can't bring it back in. But the opinion that says you could bring it back in was when it was higher than 10 Tvachim. And when it was higher than 10 Tvachim, so since regarding, it doesn't have a law of public property, so therefore they would be lenient. Okay, we'll see more tomorrow. We'll continue in this interesting cases of the Gemara. Look, have a great day. Ralph, have a great day.
You too.